person who's being branded should be completely nude and sort of held to the table like a sort of almost like a sacrifice. I don't know if that's a feeling of submission, you know?
The Nxivm cult led by Keith Raniere is known to be one of the most evil cults in recent history. A cult built on blood and known to practice trafficking, branding, child labor, and so much more. Let's get into it. It's 2003 and the world is being wowed by a mysterious vanguard. Promises of unlocking your greater inner self, curing Tourette's, even helping children speak up to 13 different languages. Yes, this was Keith Raniere on the Forbes cover in 2003. Even back then, the allegations were rising against him. Some were just able to see the darker, manipulative side of him. But no one knew just how far down the rabbit hole went. Let's start from the beginning. Keith Raniere was born on August 26, 1960 in New York. When he was a child, he recalled his mother being an alcoholic, and to add on, his parents finalized their divorce when he was 8. From there, nothing out of the ordinary, completely normal. What is interesting is that he states he was very into mind reading and the like since age 12. What flipped the switch according to his father was one night, what we did is we told Keith about how gifted and how intelligent he was. And it was almost like a switch went off. Suddenly, one night he turned into Jesus Christ and thought he was superior and better than everybody, like he was a deity. It was that dramatic and that profound. It went right to his head. After that, he would call a dozen girls from school every day and tell them all the same thing. You're special to me, I love you, and you get the point. These were early signs of how charming and manipulative he could be. Charm, unfortunately for him, didn't translate to intelligence. He graduated from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute with a 2.26 GPA, having failed or barely passed many of the upper level math and science classes he bragged about taking. No big downfall in this story. Keith was a scumbag from the start. At only age 24, he was busted for having an intimate relationship with a 15-year-old. But don't worry, it gets weirder. The 13-year-old was Gina Melita and they had met in a theater group. After breaking up, Keith got intimate with her best friend, also 15, Gina Hutchinson. When they got busted by Gina's older sister, he told her that Gina was a Buddhist goddess that was meant to be with him. They were allowed to stay together for some reason, and Gina dropped out of school to stay with him, even working at his small company, Consumers Byline, for a short period. Then on October 11, 2002, Gina Hutchinson was found dead of a gunshot wound to the head at a Buddhist monastery and was ruled a suicide. After this, Keith went from business to business, interested in science and programming. Going back in time a little, what's interesting is Keith had a history of charming even the best hypnotists in the light. One woman, who was Miss Michigan by the way, even recalled that Keith told her that women who are intimate with him see a blue light. Whether he saw this to get intimate with her or not, it definitely worked because she recalls actually seeing the blue light. Soon after this, the cult was formed. However, it didn't start off as a cult. In fact, it started off as a personal development company, the same company Gina worked at. Keith and Salzman, who was the hypnotist mentioned earlier, founded an executive success program, offering a range of techniques aimed at self-improvement. A few years later, it was rebranded under the name Nxivm. Keith took the title Vanguard from his favorite arcade game where destroying your enemies increased your power. Much of Nxivm was influenced by the teachings of Ayn Rand, one of Raniere's favorite authors. On a quick but relevant tangent, Rand believed objectivism, describing its essence as the concept of man as a heroic being with his own happiness as the moral purpose of his life, with productive achievement as his noblest activity and reason as his only absolute. This will only come into play later, but before it could be transformed into a cult, a few conditions had to be met. Number 1 was money, but Keith had a small problem on the side: divorce, to his wife of 8 years that he had of course been cheating on. She claimed he was relentlessly harassing her, and the judge seemed to confirm this, saying, "This matter smacks of a jilted fellow's attempt at revenge or a retaliation against his former girlfriend," with many attempts at tripping her up along the way. But fortunately for Keith, and unfortunately for everyone else, Keith was free to do what he wanted. And he did. He started by fulfilling the second condition: money. He and Salzman successfully recruited members of the influential Bronfman family, heirs to the multi-billion-dollar Seagram's fortune. Sarah Bronfman initially became involved, followed by sister Claire Bronfman. Their father, Edgar Bronfman, took an Nxivm course the following year. Now, the cult was established, and the first victim was Kristen Mary Cinder, a 35-year-old woman who paid $7,000 to enroll in a 16-day personal development course conducted in Anchorage, Alaska, by ESP/Nxivm leader Nancy Salzman. After her course, Kristen traveled to meet other leaders in New York. She was possibly expecting they would make her part of the business or something along those lines, but upon meeting Keith, she was already charmed and manipulated. Sydney's mother later recalls how worried she was about her daughter. She had come to believe she was the cause of the Columbia shuttle disaster, and maybe even worse, she thought Keith was incredible. Cinder, accompanied by her partner, Haiti Clifford, signed up for a second 16-day session in Anchorage. Clifford recalls that on the 10th day of the course, Sydney began claiming to be pregnant with Raniere's child. In 2019, it was revealed that Nxivm leader Claire Bonfin had claimed Cinder was indeed pregnant with Raniere's child, according to a former IT consultant. Clifford was told by Nxivm that she wasn't allowed to take Sydney to a hospital for unknown reasons, and that was the last time anyone talked to Sydney. Fast forward, February 6, 2003, Sydney was last seen leaving the Nxivm seminar. 2 days later, her car was found 120 miles away at Seward, Alaska. The police stumbled upon a note in the wreckage. I attend a course called Executive Success Programs, based out of Anchorage, AK, and Albany, NY. I was brainwashed, and my emotional center of the brain was turned off. I still have feeling in my external skin, but my internal organs are rotting. I am sorry, life. I didn't know I was already dead. May we persist into the future. A separate page added, no need to search for my body. And that was that. That didn't stop Nxivm's popularity. In fact, it catapulted their notoriety. In October 2003, Keith was featured on the cover of Forbes magazine. Keith was regarded as the world's strangest coach, and Nxivm was coined as Cult of Personality. The cover story discussed Raniere's title Vanguard and detailed his business, Consumer's Byline, which collapsed in accusations of being a pyramid scheme. The cover story included a quote from billionaire Edgar Bronfman, accusing the organization of being a cult. This genuinely confused Nxivm members. They were expecting only positive top remarks about the organization. What bothered them the most was the remarks from Edgar. This caused bad blood between Nxivm and Edgar Bronfman. A witness at Raniere's trial later testified that Edgar Bronfman's computer was compromised and his emails monitored by group members for a period of years. After the Forbes magazine, Nxivm's credibility took a devastating hit. To try and mend this, they sought the endorsement of the Dalai Lama, spending $2 million on the project, which, spoiler alert, didn't work out for them. Shortly after this, a small group left Nxivm because of the unethical practices and the alleged abuse of the leader using his status to sexually manipulate women in the organization. One woman named Daniela was part of the inner circle of Nxivm and was in no relationship with Keith. Yet when he found out she kissed another man, he lost it. He locked himself in a bathroom, and when he came out, he ordered her to be confined to a small room, with the only thing being in there was a mattress and the video camera to watch her. She was held captive in there for 2 years. Much later in court, it was revealed this was only the beginning of the Nxivm rabbit hole. Keith was up to much worse. Within Nxivm, there was a secret sorority called DOS. The women lower on the pyramid were known as slaves, and were to be branded with Keith's initials using a cauterizing pen. The brand was near the pelvis and was mandatory if they wanted to join. The women were also told to give Nxivm their nudes or anything else that would be damaging to their character. This was done for 2 reasons. One was to manipulate them further, and 2 was so that if they ever spoke out against Nxivm or their practices, they could leak them. It worked as an overwhelming threat, and just to make sure he was fully in control, he had them starve themselves to have the physique Keith attracted. Keith would continue this and much worse until 2018, where his terror would come to an end. The FBI filed a criminal complaint against Raniere, most likely for wire frauds, racketeering, and much more. Keith was tracked down in Mexico, where he was with up to 10 women in a luxury villa outside of Puerto Vallarta.
Hey. Let's go in the car. We're gonna follow them. Get out of the way. Huh? Lauren's coming. Lauren. Let's go, you guys.
He was brought to New York to stand trial for abuse against women, and the trial began. The trial wasn't a very long one, and Keith had literally no legs to stand on. His team couldn't even properly defend him due to the amount of witness and evidence against him. Raniere was indicted on a variety of charges related to DOS, including sex trafficking, conspiracy for sex trafficking, and conspiracy to commit forced labor. The prosecutor stated that Raniere created a secret society of women with whom he had sex and had branded with his initials, coercing them with the threat of releasing their highly personal information and taking their assets. His federal trial started on May 7, 2019. The prosecutors had many witnesses from inside of the cult, so their credibility was liable, some of them in a plea deal for exposing him. On June 19, 2019, Keith was found guilty of sexual exploitation of a child and possession of child pornography with regard to minor victim Camille. Some of his charges include sex trafficking of Nicole, attempted sex trafficking of Jay, identifying theft against Edgar Bonfin, James Loperfido, Ashana Chenoa, Mariana, and Pam Fritz, trafficking for labor and services of Daniela, forced labor of Nicole, conspiracy to alter records for use in an official proceeding, and sex trafficking conspiracy, forced labor conspiracy, racketeering conspiracy, and wire fraud conspiracy. For his crimes, he was sentenced to 120 years in prison and made to pay $3.4 million out to the victim. Keith was a master manipulator and generally horrible person who ruined many lives. Fortunately, he finally got what he deserved and is eligible for parole when he turns 160, so he's not getting out, ever. This was a crazy, disturbing, and fun story to document. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.